Hi, tennis fans. This is Shane Lambert, freelance writer, mainly at movietvtechgeek.com. Going to look at a couple articles that wrote in the last several days here. So there's the website, movietvtechgeeks.com. I write about tennis a lot. So we had Alexander Zverev win the Rome Masters in a historic result. Surprising result. Um, he beat Djokovic in the final. I didn't think that I'm not surprised to see Djokovic lose. I am surprised that Zverev was the one who won though the whole tournament. I thought maybe it was a chance for David Goffin or even Grigor Dimitrov to win this tournament. But let's take a look at what Zverev the victory does. Um, what I found very significant with it, and I mentioned it in this article, he became the youngest player that currently holds a Masters Series title by 8 years. Um, so Zverev, he just turned 20 about a month ago, almost to the day here. The youngest guy that had won a Masters Series title at any point in his career before Sunday was Marin Cilic, who won Cincinnati last year, and Cilic's 28 in 7 months. So it was really surprising that nobody younger than Cilic had won Masters Series title to their credit. But it's also Zverev's 8 years younger than Cilic, so when you look at the guys that are between Cilic and Zverev, you're dealing with a lot of kind of underachievers there. Del Potro never won a Masters Series yet. I talk about that in this section here. Nishikori never won a Masters Series yet. Raonic, Goffin, Thiem, Pui. So Zverev just did something that a lot of guys haven't been able to do, and that does suggest that you could probably tip him for the top. Um, he's a tall guy. I think he's 6'6", and that will actually make it hard for him to get to number one. The reason I say that is it seems like the guys that kind of get over Andy Murray's height. Andy Murray's 6'3". Federer's I think 6'1", and so is Nadal, and Djokovic is the same. Those guys are 6'1", 6'2". Once you start getting to 6'4", 6'5", and upwards, you start to lose some of your coordination. Of course, you do get more power and court coverage in some instances, height coverage, but these guys that are 6'6", they don't necessarily run like athletes, and they seem to pick up injuries a little bit more often. Certainly Cilic is like that, and Del Potro's like that. But Zverev, in terms of just pure talent when he's healthy, he looks like he's better than a heck of a lot of players that are in his generation. Look at the guys that are 5-6 years older than him. He looks like he's better than Raonic. He looks like he's better than Dimitrov. I don't know if he's better than Thiem on clay. But I think Zverev's better than Goffin. He looks like he's better than Borna Coric too, and I know there's lots of other guys to look at here, but this is a guy that looks like he'll spend a lot of time in the top five in the next 10 years. His number one potential, don't overestimate him. Expect him to pick up an elbow injury here and there, or a leg injury or something that'll keep him off the courts for a bit. And to be number one, you have to put a whole year together. But he could definitely maybe win the Australian Open one of these years, take some time to recover from it, and then win Wimbledon, and that would definitely do well for him to get to number one. So I do think he'll get to number one. I don't think he'll shatter any records for most weeks at number one, but I would be looking for him maybe to even spend something like 30-35 weeks at number one in his career, and to spend a whole lot more in the top five. So he's looking like the guy that might shelve Federer here, that is gonna the young guy that's gonna cut Federer off from the titles here, and he's only getting better. He's 20. He's only getting better, and he just won the Rome Masters, and he's getting better. Federer, you can talk about his start to the season being superior, and it is, but Federer is only going to get worse. So there's those, and with the passage of time, um, hard to picture Zverev losing to Federer come 2018 and onward. In fact, I betcha Zverev turns in a winning record against Federer from this point onward, and they'll probably bump into one another. So here's a guy, he could be the guy that cuts Federer off from a lot of titles, and as soon as Murray, Djokovic, and Nadal, maybe even just a couple years from now, Zverev will still be just 22. Those guys will be getting closer to their mid-30s. He'll definitely be taking some titles away from them at that point, in my opinion, if healthy, of course, and that's a big if and always in tennis. You don't get a substitution, so if you're not healthy, you don't play. But looking at the Rome Masters, there was one point that I wanted to make. Winning, of course, he won, and you don't win a Rome Masters title or any Masters Series event unless you're playing well. There's definitely some Masters Series tournaments where you don't have the best draw, or pardon me, the draws aren't as deep as some of the other ones. You got guys that skip events and things like this. What's noteworthy with the Rome Masters, they are played immediately following the Madrid Masters. So the guys that do well in Madrid, they aren't exactly feeling perfect. So we had Thiem and Nadal make the Madrid final, and then with no real break except for the one afforded by a first round bye in Rome, they had to go back at it. I would think there would have been a different result. Say had Nadal hadn't played in Madrid at all, and he just played in Rome on 100% rest and he fully recovered from his last effort, he probably would have won Rome. So there was a weakness there in the draw where the two best clay quarters, in my opinion, Nadal and I think Thiem, will rise up to be a better clay quarter than anybody else in that draw besides Nadal. The two best clay quarters were both spent heading into the tournament, and that kind of opened up a chance for an underdog champion. So that's what I look at here. But I don't mean to take much away from it because you just don't win that draw without having some major ability. And at 20 years old, he could win Wimbledon. I'm not looking at him to win the French Open, to be honest. The other thing I look at him with Zverev is he hasn't yet really done anything in a major. He's made the third round, and he's never made the fourth. So, what does that mean? Well, Grand Slams are best of 5. Maybe he's got a little bit of a problem there that's not doesn't show up in the shorter matches. So speaking of those, let's take a look at the stupid and screwy rule changes that the ATP wants to implement or test out. So if you're a tennis fan, you've probably seen this. The ATP wants to test out new rules at the next gen ATP finals. And I wrote about that. I don't like the rule changes. But here's the summary. First to 4 games wins the set. Tiebreak at 3-3. Sets are to be best of 5 and no ad scoring. Warm-ups are limited to 5 minutes. Don't care about that. 25-second shot clock. I'm fine with that. No lets on serve. I don't think that should change. I don't mind the medical timeout, but I do not like the coaching. So first to 4 sets. All I think is that it won't be well received just as too radical of a change. Takes too much getting used to. But what I'm suspicious of is, getting rid of the deuce games. So you just play no ad scoring. That means when it's 40-40, next point wins. Now, not only will that take a lot of getting used to, but what it does is it takes out the long games out of the tennis matches. So even though they play best of 5 sets on shorter sets, you can say, well, it'll be about the same. I disagree. These matches are going to be a lot shorter. The reason for that is, how many times do you watch a tennis game where they go deuce advantage, deuce advantage, deuce advantage, deuce advantage until the cows come home? And sometimes they take 10 to 20 minutes. Those games are going to be a lot shorter. They're going to be like 4 minutes. And that will make the matches easier for the older players. So I think it's Djokovic's 30th birthday today. If not, it's coming up pretty quick here. Murray just turned 30. Nadal's 31. He'll be 31 in 2 weeks here, and Federer will be 36 in a few months here. Could be that they're just trying to make the matches shorter and less physically demanding to keep the older players around. As soon as the big four get too old for tennis, there will be people that lose their jobs. Not for a lack of performance or anything like that, but these Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Murray are huge. And unless guys start following Dominic Thiem, Alexander Zverev, Grigor Dimitrov with the same kind of passion that they followed the careers of Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, and Murray to date, there's going to be a shrinkage in tennis interest. And it's hard to see the next generation of players matching what the big four did in terms of fan base. So by keeping the matches shorter, keeps the older guys in it, and it's the older guys that are kind of paying the bills for a lot of people right now. That's the way I see it. I don't mind the shot clock. I watch a lot of tennis. I'm sure you do too. The refs, the umpires, they don't. The chair umpires, they don't enforce the 20-second rule, right? It's like they show you the clock on TV and it's at 28, 29 seconds, and the chair umpire's kind of nervous for some reason about not wanting to make the call, and then sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't, and anytime you have ambiguity like that, it's unfair. So if they got a shot clock, like say a basketball shot clock, that's objective. It shows that they have to get on with it. You don't have to rely on any kind of manual count. No lets on serve. So basically, the ball hits the net, and the point just plays out if it goes in. I like lets. I don't. Of course, when players are in a rally and it's a net court happens, some are worse than others, but say one just dribbles over the net and it's just impossible to get to because the guy's 6 feet behind the baseline. Players know not to celebrate that. It's kind of like if you're a baseball player and you kind of mishit the ball, but it just trickles down the third baseline where nobody can get it, and you're standing on first base, and that's just a fluky hit, and it's part of the game. But it's not something you celebrate. So guys, when they win with a net court, they don't exactly start doing jumping jacks and talking trash, but you have to accept that part of the game, because you can't replay a rally because there's so many net courts that you can't really do it. But you can replay a serve. There's nothing invested in the point yet. So if we can eliminate this kind of fluky aspect of the game, it's just so lame if somebody clips the net on a serve and it goes for a, what do you call it, a let court ace. So you can't fix the rallies, but you can keep the let courts out of the service games by just not counting the point. What I would think is maybe any kind of let is a fault, but the technology's a little difficult sometimes. I don't want coaching in tennis. What I like about tennis specifically um, is the one versus one component, mentally and physically. Now, it's hard to think of any other sport where it's just unadulterated one versus one. Even like boxing, they got their after their 3 minute round, their coaches are telling them stuff and they're watching the match in the corner. Now in tennis, it's not pure. You get these hand signals, and one time I was at the Masters in Toronto, and I was watching, I think, Somdev Deverman versus Dennis Istomin, and Deverman kept looking at me, and I was just like, I was sitting in the second last row, and it wasn't a grandstand or anything, just like 10 rows of bleachers, and he kept looking at me, and I'm like, why does he keep looking at me? And then I look behind me, and his coach is behind me, and so every time before he served, of course, he's getting the coach is telling him where to serve, so he doesn't have to do the mental work. I don't like that. I would prefer that they did something to take the coaches out of it somehow, and that's really hard to do. But I actually played in chess tournaments in university, and you're looking at the chess component of a sport. Well, in chess tournaments, it was understood that the other player's coach could not be in the player's field of view, or couldn't be in the player's earshot, or else just the littlest things, and nope, don't make that move, yep, make that one, and you're playing against the coach instead of the player. So somehow taking the coaches out of the field of view and out of earshot, I would be pro, and I think they should think of a way to do it. But I respect tennis at its purest when it's just one versus one, And what I say is, say what you want about LeBron James, Connor McDavid, and Tom Brady as great players in their sports. These guys get timeouts when they were tired, and during games they have a lot of people doing a lot of the mental work for them. So all these players, they got other people calling timeouts when they're tired, and they got coaches doing the mental work to an extent. I like tennis for just one versus one. And what I say is, I wouldn't be surprised if every top 5 player in history had a genius or just below genius IQ. I don't think you make the top 5 in tennis unless you got it going on upstairs. However, if they allowed coaching during the matches, then you would have some players who kind of, aren't the same anymore. But all these changes, I think they're just marketing friendly to a certain extent. They need to be TV friendly. I'm sure TV doesn't like these 5-hour matches, to be honest. I'm sure TV would like something that there's 3 hours and then the match is over, and eliminating the long ad games does that. So it's all market pressure that's kind of ruining tennis. Like if you look at their scoreboard here, 4-2, 4-2, 4-1, 4-3, 4-3. Get real. I don't know if I'd watch. Like it would almost like be like, can somebody start up a different tennis league with the old rules, please, and try to sign on those players, the other players, and the ATP can just go the way of the dodo. That's how I would feel about if they implemented all these rules. But they're thinking about doing it, and once they're thinking about doing it, there's a chance they'll do it. And if you get a bunch of young tennis fans who aren't too philosophical about the sport and don't really know what it's about or what it's like, and they start liking it better, then it'll happen. So yeah, lots to be worried about if you're a traditional tennis fan. All right, please click and read my articles and share them, and you can also follow me on Twitter. That's at uncoolnegated. Okay, thanks. Bye bye.